And welcome back to Versus Live. Our second match today is going to feature a very interesting strategy. I'm going to be playing a Guildgate deck. Now, people have been talking about this for a couple weeks. It feels like they're really starting to push some of these gate-centric cards. Guild Summit being, I think, the one that people are most excited about because drawing cards is obviously very strong. But over the last couple of weeks, I've seen a lot of talk about, I believe, it's Gateway Colossus as well as Gatebreaker Ram. I think it's Gatebreaker Ram. He's in my sideboard.
It's Gatebreaker Ram.
Cool, got it right. Hey, I'm getting there.
Archway Angel.
Yeah, Archway Angel is also in the sideboard as a way to gain a bunch of life against these aggressive decks. Once you cast Circuitous Root, it pushes you really far forward into casting these really cool gate-centric cards. And Circuitous Root, I think, is the heart and soul of this deck.
Yes. We've seen Explosive Vegetation and similar cards do a lot of work over the years. Even from the time it was first printed in Onslaught, there was a block constructed deck that was a key card and block constructed for a while. And then when it was recently reprinted, it was part of a lot of ramp decks that did very well, usually ramping into Big Eldrazi and Ugin and things like that in the Jeskai Black era. And now we see Circuitous Root didn't do a whole lot in the first 3 months, but now that we have a lot more Gates Matters cards, so we can sort of turn on that aspect of it as opposed to it being strictly Explosive Vegetation, we're seeing these decks come together, and when they get going, they do really powerful stuff. They give you some time early because their lands enter the battlefield tapped, but if you don't close the game, they're going to bury you.
Now, I think the biggest upside to playing this deck is that if mono red basically falls out of favor, I think that a Gates deck might end up being the best deck just because it goes way over the top of everyone else. And this version specifically is geared toward trying to ignore most of what your opponent is doing. This version is playing, obviously, one of my favorite combos, which is Expansion Explosion alongside Wilderness Reclamation. Wilderness Reclamation, pretty sweet at turning off the negative effect of the gates and the fact that they enter the battlefield tapped. So it's a little combo that I'm really looking forward to playing. Aside from that, I think Plaza of Harmony is one of the cards that was really overlooked when it was first previewed, and gives you a really good reason to play gates, in that it's a land. I mean, we already seen from Gift of Paradise getting 3 life on a nominal effect. Something we've seen a lot before, a 3 mana thing that lets you get an extra mana. The 3 life, pretty good against aggressive strats. Ramping you towards the fairy while giving you that buffer kind of resets one of the turns you lost in the early turns from kind of spending your turn to ramp. And a land that enters the battlefield and gains 3 life and then effectively taps for any color mana, because it's rare that you don't have the right colors of mana for your stuff.
Yeah,
it's just a potent land, and one that I think really pushes it over the top.
Yeah, and you need a land like that because you need to really be playing all the good Gates Matters cards, and they're spread out across a lot of different colors, so that card really ties the room together in both giving you extra time against aggressive decks that you need and in helping you just cast all of your different spells at various different color costs. So I'm excited to see this deck, and we've pitted it against what I think is going to be an interesting matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm in the very middle of the spectrum. This is a mid-range deck. This is Wyatt Darby's Esper mid-range deck specifically. 5th place from the Open last weekend. Built around Hero of Precinct 1. We've got about 30 multicolored cards, so we're going to be able to create a lot of tokens with it. And we have a lot of disruptive elements and thought erasure and counter spells on the sideboard, and there's some good removal here. We got Mortify to handle Wilderness Reclamation, which is a nice one. We got Thief of Sanity, which was a really good card for Wyatt across the weekend. It did a lot of good work for him, especially in his camera matches, and should still be good here. Maybe I can, although I can't play lands off of it, right? So I can't really play the Gates Matters cards.
You can't get the Gates Matters card.
Yeah,
I mean, you can.
They just don't do a whole
lot.
lot.
Ram, 2/2.
Yeah,
I think the one of the most important cards for this Gates Matters deck is Gates Ablaze. And I don't think that's a shocker to anybody. Since all your lands basically enter the battlefield tapped, Gates Ablaze allows you to catch back up for 3 mana. Normally 3 mana effects that do damage to all creatures cap at 3, but the ones that cap at 3 are usually widely played. Slagstorm, Anger of the Gods, now Deafening Clarion, and now Gates Ablaze. But as the game progresses and you hit Circuitous Root and you just cast Growth Spiral and you just continue putting more and more gates on the battlefield, you're going to see Gates Ablaze hit upwards of 6, 7, 8, and be able to take care of things like giant wild growth walkers, even Hydroid Crassus if it gets too big.
Carnage Tyrant.
Right.
A lot of big things. Skargan, Hellkite, and other colors. So.
And at only 3 mana, you have extra mana left over, usually on those later turns, to do something really impactful. It never kills Gatebreaker Ram. I just realized that. That was, in my head, I mean, it makes sense, right? This is a 2/2, gets +1/+1 for every gate, and Gates Blaze can only do as much as gates you have. So Gatebreaker Ram just always survives it, which is really sweet. So that's a pretty cool interaction. So something to keep note of. This matchup in particular, again, I pitted this deck against Ross's deck specifically to see if this matchup was going to be super hard, because Mortify being able to kill Reclamation or any of my other key enchantments, something I want to see how good that is, as well as the disruption. The main deck, Thought Erasers into something like Thief of Sanity could play a huge role.
So. Yeah, if I can hit Wilderness Reclamation, and then that'll let me extend my battlefield while also holding up Disruption, will be really nice.
Sideboard games are going to be a nightmare, which I'm very happy about.
This matchup just has a lot of angles to it. I'm not just trying to race you and hope like a Gates Blaze doesn't hit on turn 3 or 4, though that card is still good.
Yeah, we didn't want to pit it against like Mono Red. Like, we want to see. I want to see what the Gates deck can do. But I also want to see what it can do in the face of adversity. And if it functions and looks good through all of the Mortifies and the Thought Erasers, and after sideboard the Duress and the Negates and Disdainful Strokes, then I think we got a serious contender. I'm not sold that the Gates deck is good enough yet, but it's something that when I saw it, it snapped. And we're going to see if it pops.
Okay.
So let's go and get to the match. We'll take some questions after game one, because we've been chatting for too long.
Todd's getting antsy.
Yeah, I lost the first match, so I'm going to be on the play.
He's too close to Wilderness Reclamation. He can't help himself now.
That's true. All right, I'm going to keep my hand. It's very good.
I have a solid hand. There's a hole in the curve, but I've got several draws to fill it. So.
All right. Is that Guildgate?
Hallowed Fountain.
Gruul Guildgate.
Okay. Untapped land. Like,
Ooh, wow.
A normal human being.
That's weird.
Thought Erasure you.
Okay. Well, now my deck falls apart. Just kidding. All right. We have 2 Deafened Clarion, Growth Spiral, and Expansion Explosion. My gut says take Growth Spiral, but I don't know how good the Expansion Explosion or the Deafened Clarions are.
That is what my gut is saying too, so I'm going to go for that one. There is something to be said for actually taking one of these Clarions because of the way my hand is. But I think I can mitigate that, so I'm going to take the Spiral and then Surveil 1, and we don't need another land, so let's graveyard that.
All right, your turn.
Well, we were unable to fill the hole in our curve at 3, so I'll just play a tapped shock land here. Had a lot of draws to do it in.
All right, your turn. Gates deck not really looking super impressive right now, but Ross deck not really putting me under any pressure.
Let's play Seraph of the Scales.
Sure.
Pass the turn. Good card that lines up pretty well against Clarion.
All right, I will play a Guild Summit, and when Guild Summit enters the battlefield, you may tap any number of untapped gates you control. Draw a card for each gate. Tap this way. I'm going to draw 1, and then whenever you play a gate, draw a card. Or whenever a gate enters the battlefield on your turn. Your turn.
It's going to be rough for me, so
that means he doesn't have Mortify, which is huge for me.
For 4. You go to 16.
I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. Guild Summit, a huge part of this
I'm going to play a Basilica Bellhaunt.
Oh, no, not Basilica Bellhaunt.
I go to 23. Todd discards a card, and that's another card, too, because that's Gate. But Todd probably has another one then. Tapped Water Grave and pass the turn.
Sure do. Okay. I'm going to draw a card.
Yep.
All right, we're going to play a Clarion and copy it. So the first one's going to do 3 here, 3 to that. You get the 2 tokens, and then the second one will clear the tokens and the what you call it. All right, your turn.
Pretty good. Okay, I got another Seraph. Pass.
Okay. Draw for turn. Draw a card. I will play a Circuitous Root.
Gross.
Right, I'll go get 2 gates and draw 2 cards. I'm really sad. I mean, I know why they didn't do it. I'm really sad Plaza of Harmony doesn't count as a guild gate, because the previous one does. The one from Guilds of Ravnica.
Turning Circuitous Ride into a gain 6 would be...
Gain 6 would be nuts. It's already very good. All right, so I have 2 gates entering the battlefield off Guild Summit, so we're going to draw 2 cards, and this is where the game starts getting really out of control. Because even if Ross hits some stuff to deal with it, it's just might not be enough. All right, I will pass turn. We're still at 16, 6 cards in hand.
for 4.
Yep, 12.
I know there's another Clarion there, so let's extend the worst creature I have in Hostage Taker.
Okay, unfortunately for Ross, Hostage Taker does not take enchantments, only takes artifacts.
And I will pass the turn.
Gross Spiral?
I will respond to that by mortifying this Guild Summit.
Sure.
That'll prevent Todd from drawing cards.
Joke's on you. All I have was my 2 basics.
Sure. I'm pretty happy if you have both basics in your hand, because those are about the worst cards in your deck at this point.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to Circuitous Route and then play a Nexus of Fate.
Okay. It's not the worst. Down to 3 cards in hand. We know one of them is Clarion. Pretty sure there are no lands in them, because Todd probably would have... Although maybe once I kill the Guild Summit, he might be holding gates in his hand to draw cards off it. But you draw cards either way off that. So no, he would put a gate onto the battlefield. So I think he's got 3 spells, unless he drew a gate last turn.
All right, so I have an Explosion. I just don't know if I should main phase it to play around some sort of potential main deck counterspell. Obviously, I know why Darby, or as far as I can remember, why it didn't have any main deck counterspells. Whatever. I don't mind discarding a bunch of extra stuff, so kill this.
For 9?
No, I'm going to do it upkeep because I don't want to take that extra damage. I'm at 12.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to play this. I'm going to say go. Upkeep. I'm going to target the Seraph for 9.
9, yeah. Okay, I get 2 spirits.
And also, I don't have to discard, which is tight.
And draw for turn. And attack for 2.
At 10.
I know there's a Clarion there, so there's no point in me playing this past the turn.
I haven't even looked. Well, I got 2 Nexus of Fate. You want to give up? Okay. I have 3 Nexus of Fate. Never mind.
Okay. Does my brand strike you as one that is built around giving up in games that are hopeless? Didn't you tweet to this effect a month ago?
Chad is letting us know that we made a mistake. Hostage Taker had to take the Seraph.
Oh yeah, that's not a May.
No. Okay. Well, we messed up, but we're not undoing the last 10 turns or whatever. I'm sorry.
I forgot that this wasn't a May. It's like the only one that isn't. And doesn't say opponent controls. Somehow, I don't know why they decided that.
All right, I'm gonna draw 4 cards.
Yeah, I'm actually.
There it is. Okay.
I'm very dead in this game, regardless.
Also cast the Nexus. I drew Hydro Crash. My win condition, just so you know, is Hydro Crash just an explosion.
Well, I drew Thief of Sanity on turn 4 instead of turn 3, and that sort of snowballed out of control.
That's a GG. All right, now we will field some questions before we move to sideboard. If anyone has any, that was impressive.
Yeah, I just wasn't able to apply a ton of pressure. Like I kept a hand with Thought Erasure and a good 4-drop in Seraph. Needed something to fill the curve. Couldn't do that, and then it just didn't have the pressure needed to close that game.
Yeah, I mean, also I think just like you had the one piece of disruption in Thought Erasure, and then I just drew Guild Summon afterwards, and that just kind of buried you in card advantage, which was super gross. Yeah. So I mean, that was pretty nice. Anyway.
Still waiting for some more questions to come in. Kind of just a silly one. Todd, are you a Wilderness Reclamation junkie? From H. Timmy.
Yes.
Okay, well,
the first step is admitting you have a problem. I mean, I don't even know if it's going to win a tournament anytime soon. But all I know is the feeling you get when you get to play it and then untap all your lands is stupid. Like, it's so good.
Okay, so light on questions. I think we'll take our break for sideboarding.
Yeah, let's go do that.
Take a couple minutes. Get your questions in. Make sure you tag at SCG Tour so Kyle can pick out the good ones and send them over to us. We'll take some questions while we sideboard, and we will be back in a few. And we are back here with sideboarding for Gates nonsense against Esper Midrange. On my side,
You say Gates nonsense. I say Esper nonsense, sir. Sir. You just have no response, huh?
Nope,
Yep.
nothing.
There it is. Okay.
Nothing I can say on air. So on my side, I am bringing in the 6 obvious cards on my sideboard: counter spells and duresses. They are excellent. We're bringing out Lyra, which is meant for aggressive decks, and it's just really expensive in this matchup. I don't want to be tapping 5 mana on my turn when I have these counter spells in my deck. Hostage Taker doesn't really have any targets except for Hydroid Crisis. We've got some Mortifies, and we're leaving in a couple deputies to help handle. What's the blue enchantment again?
Oh, Guild Summon
Guild Summon.
and Wilderness Reclamation.
And Wilderness Reclamation. So we've got 4 Mortify, 2 Deputy in the post-board configuration. I think that's going to be enough. This is kind of a weak answer to those. So you don't want too many of them because it dies to Gates Ablaze and just doesn't put them under a lot of pressure. So only leave a couple in, bring in our 6 good cards. The rest of our sideboard, not really great in this matchup. Like, I don't want to be playing this game against them of like drawing cards with Karn because they're going to be better at it. I need to be putting pressure on them and then just stopping their card advantage and their big spells before they take over the game. So we're going to leave in as much disruption as we reasonably can and then just pressure them with hopefully Hero Precinct 1 and Seraph, the scales and things like that.
Okay. My side. As you can see, I've splayed my entire sideboard because I want to talk about why these cards are in the sideboard, and very few of them, if any, are for this matchup in particular. Before you take those away, I want to point out cards like Negate, Disdainful Stroke, Duress. This is going to be the true test for any Wilderness Reclamation strategy, because if your deck completely hinges on the card Wilderness Reclamation, these cards combined with any amount of pressure are going to bury you. So it's our goal to minimize the impact of these cards, and I think that the easiest way to do that is to build a sideboard that lets you cut all your Nexus of Fate. You know, I drew a bunch of them in that last game. Obviously, after the card that won me the game was Explosion, right? Like I Explosion for 20 or whatever. Maybe it was Guild Summit that won me the game because it just drew me like 6 cards or whatever.
Yeah.
Both those very strong and a way for me to grind you out so that I don't actually need to like take all the turns or take extra turns, you know? And it just doesn't make sense. Like obviously in certain matchups, right? If you are playing against like a mono red deck and you get control, there's a chance you just die. Your opponent does something, peels a frenzy, casts it, finds a burn spell, and kills you, right? And in that scenario, yes, you want Nexus of Fate. But after sideboard, when your opponent has more ways to interact with you and to make your Wilderness Reclamation worse, and your Guild Summits worse, and all your engine-based stuff worse, Nexus of Fate is bad because Nexus of Fate relies on you having an engine active for it to do anything at all. We saw one game, last game. The only thing I did with it really was on the first one I cast it with a Circuitous Root. That was it. It's not like I, found. I don't know. It just doesn't seem that good. That's all I'm saying.
When your engine's not humming, it's a 7 mana Explorer.
Yeah, and that's not great. We're going to be trading that for 1 Star of Extinction, leaving the rest of the stuff in the sideboard for now, and we may end up trying to board in some negates or something like that.
Just
to try
shuffle
to
both
protect.
cards in.
You all right? Okay. We may end up trying. Well, Nexus of Fate always shuffles back in. That's how the card works. We might board out all the Nexus of Fate after game 2, depending on what happens, in favor of things like Negate to maybe protect my combo. I'm not really high on any of these cards for this particular matchup, though. Negate, Disdainful Stroke are pretty bad when you're the slow deck against an opposing deck with Negate and Disdainful Stroke, if that makes sense. And Gatebreaker Ram is more for having this like cheap threat that can pressure opposing control opponents, as well as having a giant blocker for mono red. So much so that I think it's possible Gatebreaker Ram should just be in the main deck. The only matchup it's really bad against is the mid-range matchups, because they just have a ton of removal that can kill it. So anyway, that's what we're doing. Next.
I was just going to say, a few people did point out that they think it was a mistake to have the Ram in the sideboard, so maybe you're right.
Well, I mean, if Sultai Crassus is the deck, right? Gatebreaker Ram is not good against them. In fact, it's actively bad. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I like that as a sideboard juke when people bring out their creature removal and bring in a lot of disruption for your other elements, and then you increase your threat density and bring in a card that probably matches up well against their post-board configuration. And then for game 3, they're left thinking, like, do I bring in more removal to handle this Ram? But that makes me worse against the rest of their plan. If they just become too reactive, then you get infinite time to draw through their disruptions. So I think it actually is a great sideboard card. You know, sometimes a card can be really, really good in a deck, but be appropriate on the sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how things work. Cards are role players. You got to put them in the right role.
All right, Timo.
How do you feel about the Bellhaunt? Is it only good against mono red?
I don't think it's only good against mono red because the card provides a decent amount of value in other matchups, and that's why it's a good main deckable card that just happens to be insane against mono red.
I mean,
But
let's be real. It's a game over against mono red.
Yeah.
If they have to discard a card, you put a 3/4 body that can check literally every creature they play except for a 4/4 Steamkin, as well as gaining 3 life. You just counter their freaking skewer the critics. It's gone.
Yeah, it's just concentrate that affects the battlefield, and like maybe it does even more than that. It's incredible against them. But I did watch Wyatt was streaming a little bit last night, and he went down to 3 Bellhaunt in the main, put one on the sideboard.
Lost to mono red. I don't know,
because he didn't play against mono red at all apparently in the open. So you know the numbers can come down on it, but it's a good enough card that it's not there solely because of mono red.
Yeah. I'm not super happy with my hand. I don't know how, but I'm going to keep it. I don't know how you're doing over there.
My hand's not great again, but I think it's keepable because there's a decent chance it turns into something awesome.
Okay.
So let's start with the Godless Shrine.
Your turn.
That was a pretty good draw. I'll play a Hero of Precinct 1.
Okay.
Pass the turn.
Go.
Now we're cooking with gas.
Don't do it.
Let's play Dovin Grand Arbiter, trigger the hero.
Okay.
Get ourselves a Human token.
You gonna make a Thopter?
Thinking about what I want to do. And I get to get the counter back next turn, so I think I should make a Thopter.
Okay.
The only way that doesn't happen is if Todd has basic land into Gates Ablaze. So let's make a Thopter, gain a life. I'm at 21. Attack Todd to 18.
Okay.
Pass the turn. This is where Todd has basic land, Gates Ablaze. Oh, that thing enters untapped?
Sure does.
That's pretty good. 21 all.
Is that even worth it? Yeah, whatever. Let's just check it. Go.
I think you're 100% gonna have to cast it next turn. So
yeah, and also you just might have a counterspell untapped next turn. So
yeah. So I'll go to 19, and let's play a Bellhaunt and get a card out of Todd's hand, and go to 22.
I think the time for Growth Spiral is past.
And then I'll go to 23 and make another Thopter.
Okay, so
And then
21, 23.
Pass the turn. How are you ever going to kill me? I've gained so much life.
Let's play Growth Spiral. I kind of want to draw into an extra land drop. Land off of this, land for turn. Your turn.
It's pretty good. Okay, I've got a tapped land. Let's plus Dovin, an attack for 4. Brings you to 17. I get 2 more counters on this, and then I'll pass the turn.
All right, so now is the part where Ross probably just has 2 counter spells in hand or so, and I'm just going to have to fight through it over time. I'm going to go with...
Gain 3?
Gain 3. I'm going to go to 20 and
20.
cast a... Yeah, I don't actually gain more life. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay. Yep. Cast Circuitous Root.
You have 3 cards in your hand?
Yep.
So... I'm worried about Explosion. But if I counter this, Explosion gets a lot worse. Next turn, you can cast it for 3 max, and you've already played 2 of your untapped lands. Starve Extinction would be a big problem. You only have 1 of those, and again, you need an untapped land. I think I just Disdainful Stroke this. Getting ahead on lands is like pretty important for this deck.
Okay, go.
Okay, now we got to plus this again.
Yeah.
Attack you for 4 and have it go to 7.
All right, it's going to put me down to 16.
Yep, that'll put you to 16. We get to play 6th land and play Seraph of the Scales.
Yep.
This gets us to a 2-turn clock, and we get to Ultimate Dovin next turn. So, looking good.
Wilderness Reclamation.
That resolves.
Right, trigger, pull it 2.
Yep.
Okay. Hit Dovin for 4.
I also drew a negate on my turn, so
Go. That's unfortunate.
at the point where we have that negate, I think it's important to save it for a spell that actually impacts the battlefield rather than Reclamation.
I agree.
So now we get to draw, hopefully find a duress for like the last card that matters when we ultimate this. So with top 10 and we get 3 of them.
Yeah.
That is...
Yeah, that ability is very good here with your strong disruption package after sideboard. If you hit a duress, that's bad for me.
So we hit 6 lands in the 10 cards, but the 3 cards we're getting are pretty good. So
You don't have to reveal them, right?
yeah, we don't. So
Well, tell me what they are so I can concede quicker. I'm just kidding.
they go in the random order. 6 lands and a hero can go on the bottom. Definitely the worst cards. And then we will start with a duress. Take the Gates Ablaze for sure. And now discovery and look for a counterspell. Well, we don't need another land. This seems pretty good because even if Todd finds a Gates Ablaze, we'll be set up for next turn. So I'm going to keep this one, play another Dovin, plus it to 4, and then attack Todd to 8 and get it to 7.
Yep.
So now we have lethal damage and a Dovin ready to ultimate next turn, and then a tapped Watery Grave. And we have another threat back in our hand.
Yeah. We need to draw one more big card draw type thing here, and we just end up getting killed.
I guess if I'd been both, I would hit the negate for the best possibles. So saw a lot of our sideboard cards there with 2 of the counter spells and duress, so full half of them. That was a very good draw on our part. We were able to really just disrupt everything Todd did that was relevant and put him under significant pressure, and the numbers ended up working out well. So got Todd to exactly 20, even though he gained 6 extra life. It only bought him 1 extra turn.
Okay, I'm gonna do a thing.
Trying something fancy.
Yeah. All right, let's get a little top-down action here real quick while I figure this out in my brain.
I love getting fancy.
Okay, let's, we're going to board out Wilderness Reclamation and Nexus of Fate. And I think this is actually something that a lot of Wilderness Reclamation decks are going to have to learn to do, adapt after sideboard, get rid of this reliance on your enchantments because it's so hard to resolve them and just have every card you play be like a 6 or better, as opposed to a 10 with a Reclamation or a 0 without.
It's so hard to resolve Reclamation and then do something good with it. Like they're going to disrupt one, and most people, I think a lot of people are going to be mistakenly right now are targeting Reclamation really hard, and then you just win with the leftover cards because those are the ones that draw, and they might be less effective without Reclamation, but they do something. But if you focus on stopping everything else, the Reclamation that resolves just leaves you with a ton of mana.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did there in that game. And you had one draw step to find something really good, but you only had the one draw step.
Right. I think you played that game super good, and figuring out that Reclamation was not the dangerous card in that scenario because I already had a reasonable amount of mana, and you just need to stop the one thing that actually affected your side of the battlefield.
Yeah. So siding out like these engine cards that are going to be cards that they can let resolve and then focus on your low threat density and just bring in more threats, not only means that you're more threat dense against the generic disruption, the counter spells, the duresses, it also means that your opponent's probably going to have a few dead enchantment removal spells in their hand, and so you're going to be prepared to play this attrition game.
Yeah, I did that quite a bit this past weekend with my Teamer Reclamation deck, using both Murmury Mystic and Niv Mizzet Perun out of the sideboard. Pretty often citing out things like Primary Amulet and Wilderness Reclamation when I thought that it was going to be way too hard to leverage those cards. Expansion Explosion at that point becomes a way for me to force through counter spells, as well as sometimes later in the game, if I just hit my 7th or 8th mana, I can just use that either in tandem with Niv Mizzet to draw a bunch of cards and usually finish off my opponent, or just use it as a removal spell that draws a bunch of cards. And you don't really need Reclamation in that spot. It's so good in game 1, but against some decks, it just becomes so much worse in game 2. It's just a big mana generator, and if you get picked apart so that you can't use that extra mana, it doesn't do anything at all.
And it's the same false tempo plan that Twin decks used to play. People would bring in Torpor Orbs and all these weird anti-combo cards just to make sure that didn't happen. You would be down at 1 Twin in your deck and just play like a control deck. Now, given that that's Todd's sideboard plan, it's very important that you have enchantment removal that also doubles up and does something else. So now my Mortifies, rather than targeting Reclamations, can just target Gatebreaker Rams.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it's going to be super effective in this matchup, but I still like the idea, and I want to see how it works.
I don't think Gatebreaker Rim is especially good in this matchup. I think it's just slightly better because it doesn't get hit by a negate or disdainful stroke.
Yeah.
We are gonna keep mine, but I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna just make sure that I have at least one land in the top 2 cards, and if I do, I'm gonna keep it, and otherwise, I'm just gonna mull. All right, I'm gonna mull.
Okay. This is a weird.
I do not want to have a game where I do nothing, but I think that hand is really close to keepable. But if I had kept it, we just would have had a non-game. So
I have a hand that I think I'm supposed to keep, and I'm supposed to sequence pretty aggressively with it. But this is a hand that is, I think, pretty high variance. I think this game, I'm either going to run Todd over, or on turn 5, I'm going to be dead. But it's definitely a keep.
All right, can I get 6 or
7? Take 7. You're down a match.
Yeah. All right. I'm not going to cheat again. Go. I again have a 2-lander that desperately needs a 3rd one, but I'm going to believe in the heart of the card.
I'm going to go to 18 and duress you. I will take the Clarion.
Okay.
Pass the turn.
Your turn.
I will play Hero. Pass.
Go.
Attack for 2.
18.
Play another hero.
Yeah, gross spiral EOT. Play this, untap, draw. Guild Summit, draw 1 card.
That's not good.
Go. Didn't draw a land though.
Okay.
Really wanted to draw a land off of it. It chains together so well, but if you miss for like a turn, things can go bad.
I want to be. You have 4 gates. So a Gates Ablaze will clear my board if I play this, but if he has the 1 Clarion, it's good. Or I could expand my board with this and dig for a counterspell or a duress. I think because there's way more Gates Ablaze left than Clarions, I should just Discovery here, even though it's less mana efficient, and get some humans. Those are both good. So why don't we... are they both good? I have like a lot of stuff to do with my mana, so maybe I don't want this other Discovery, and I just want to dig towards other Disruption. Yeah, I'm going to try that. We'll keep this one, though, and Thought Erasure you and get 2 more humans.
Crap.
So there's a Gates Ablaze, definitely taking that one. Surveil 1 again. Don't need this Bell Haunt.
14.
Attack for 4, pass the turn.
All right, draw a card. Gatebreaker, go. So hopefully this can gum up the ground a bit. But Vigilance and Trample is a pretty big deal. It's a 7/7 right now. With the backup one in hand, I'm going to probably just start pushing towards playing a 2nd Gatebreaker Ram and holding up Negate for Mortify, and then blocking and attacking and just threaten his life total quick. But if he kills it right now, I'm in trouble.
Deputy this thing, get 2 more humans.
Okay.
Attack you for 8.
I'm at 6.
Play a tapped Water Grave and pass.
All right, I need Gates Blaze or Clarion right now, or I'm dead.
Yep.
Wow, weird. Draw a card. Not a Gates Blaze. Gatebreaker Ram. And having to gate back up. Your turn.
Gates Blaze in the yard.
Oh, it is. Crap. You're right.
Well, this is no bueno now. Play a Bell Haunt. I'll go to 21.
Discard Star Extinction.
And play this tapped and pass.
I'm going to just rely on this here Gatebreaker Ram. Do all the dirty work. All right. I'm going to play a Circuitous Root, and then I'm going to copy it.
Sure.
So I'm going to get 4 lands and draw 4 cards.
That's pretty good.
Now, if he had 2 mana up, I would not have done this, because if he just counters my Circuitous Root in response to expansion targeting it, then I lose both.
Yep.
But I didn't quite have enough mana to utilize the explosion yet. And so drawing 4 cards here and generating 4 mana while pumping my Gatebreaker Ram to astronomical sizes. Pretty big deal. Cuts.
So close in this game.
Draw 4. We have not played a land yet. I'll go to 9. So 4, 8, 10. Hit you for 12.
10. I'm at
6.
9. I gained 3 from the Bell Hunt.
You're 9. Okay, your turn.
Start with a Thought Erasure.
2 Securities Root and a Growth Spiral.
I will take the Gatebreaker Ram.
Yep. Now if he kills the one in play, that's not great. But we still have 2 roots to draw more cards.
This seems pretty good for finishing Todd off if I can. So let's Deputy this thing because it's going to kill me and attack for 3.
Yep, I'm at 6.
And then pass the turn.
Okay, see what we can do.
Maybe I was supposed to Deputy the Guild Summit last turn because the Ram wasn't going to kill me. And if he plays another one to block, then I can just I have the second Deputy for both of them because I lost on his last card, right? So I think that was my mistake.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've already played a land though.
You should probably leave 4 untapped.
Yeah, let's go 4 on tap. So let's draw 4 cards.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4. Jesus.
Todd, what's your life total?
I'm at 6.
I'm seeing in chat that we missed 3 damage.
I gained 3 life off Plaza Harmonies.
Yeah, he went.
I have you at 6 as well. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I went from 14 to 6 and then gained 3 off of Plaza.
went to 9, and then I just attacked for 3, got him to 6.
Yeah.
That Plaza's pretty good here.
Yeah.
Draw 4, and I'm pretty dead at this
2,
point.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I have plenty of cards left. You're not dead. I mean, I have the negate to protect next turn, but I have nothing. So I just need to
Yeah,
find something.
you just have so much mana, and so
1, 2, 3, 4. Your turn.
You haven't played a land yet, right?
Pretty sure I did.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure I played Semi Guild Gate and then I drew Guild Summit
Okay.
off of it.
so you got to discard a bunch of cards.
I do. 11. So
I mean, my top card might actually end this game. Probably not, though, because there's probably a Plaza in Todd's hand. But he needs 2 things to... so attack you to 2.
mm-hmm.
Play a 4-power flyer that leaves me with lethal damage if you kill it. Pass the turn.
Interesting.
I mean, there's also only 3 sweepers left in the deck. Yeah. I guess you could also have an expansion to copy them. There's just so many things you can draw here. Has to have been a very...
you're dead. You're way dead. Gain 3. I'm at 5. I'm gonna sweep. Get this back with multiple negate backups. Your turn.
Yeah.
Could also just play this and draw 4.
You drew the key gates of blaze off of the cantrip, right?
Yeah.
So if I just Deputy of Detention, the Guild Summit, and then attack you with the token, or attack you with everything, I still have lethal the next turn, I'm pretty sure. Like you would be at 10, and I would have had... No, because so I attacked you for 8 damage total, and I had 3 behind. I made 2 tokens, and I had a Deputy.
Okay.
If I hit the Guild Summit instead of the Ram, you block a hero, and you take 6 instead. So you'd be at 10. But then I have 3 more next turn, so I'd have 9 damage the next turn. So actually would have been 1 short.
But I have a Gatebreaker Rim that's gigantic, and it's just going to keep you in big.
Well, I had a second Deputy in my hand. So,
sure.
So I'm just wondering if I still get to lethal you.
No, you still get hit by the Gates
Yeah.
Blaze on the following turn.
Yeah, exactly. But if I had 1 more point somewhere, you had 1 less life, I think that's a better play.
Sure.
Because I have that back to deal with, even if you play multiple Gatebreakers as blockers, which I knew you had.
All
Yeah,
right.
I would have had 1 short. So I think I did it the right way. I just needed to dodge 2 draw steps, or a draw step with a million redraws.
Yep.
And couldn't do it. So tight game there in game 3. But I also think that if you just had a bunch of, I guess what did you bring in instead of the reclamations and stuff?
Negates and Rams.
Negates and Rams. I mean, the Rams were pretty good at closing out the game.
Yeah, I mean, they have tramples that they get through Precinct 1. They provide a blocker to force you to overextend into my
if you don't have the Ram there, then I just get to kill the Summit anyway.
Yeah.
So forcing me to use my rule on top of the Summit gave you the one extra card.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it could have been like a Reclamation, then you might have wanted to target that because it lets me do crazy stuff. But I'll say this. This Gates deck is not actually that well set up to utilize Reclamation. It literally just has Expansion, Explosion, and Nexus of Fate.
And Growth Spiral.
But that's not enough. You know, you need a lot of instants to really use that extra mana. You need
things
some
like
sort of
Insight. And
Chemisters. You need even like Search for Ascanta just to make sure that you have abilities that you can use over time. But it just didn't feel like it was enough. And obviously, it's a pretty big mana generator. And if you are going off with Circuitous Root and then Nexus of Fate and all this stuff, if everything's working together, it's awesome. But it's not really utilizing it the same way that other Wilderness Reclamation decks are utilizing it. And I think the Gate deck has enough raw power to actually just win very easily without it. I mean, we saw all 3 games, Nexus of Fate didn't do, or Wilderness Reclamation didn't do anything in this matchup. So
yeah.
You know, you got buried by Guild Summit. Circuitous Root was very good.
Yeah, it was Circuitous Root, Guild Summit, and the Sweepers.
Yeah. The Sweepers, Gates of Blaze was amazing.
Yeah,
obviously.
those 3 cards were the heavy hitters in the matchup, and all of them looked very impressive.
Yeah. Ram, I think, is a lot better than most people are giving it credit for. I think you
Yeah.
could very easily main deck it. I just don't think it's that good against the mid-range decks. So expect it to get hit a lot with Ram Chupacabra, even Cast Down. Like, you're just giving these decks just like something to do with their cast downs, and that's not great. But I would definitely look at a build of this Guildgate deck that tries to push more towards like a normal control deck that has a few more untapped lands. I would like to be able to cast Gates of Blaze for 2 on turn 3. I think that would be very helpful. I mean, I did it for 2 one time, but I had to draw one of my 6 lands off the top that could do it, and that was a little awkward. But aside from that, I mean, it looked sweet. I don't know.
No, I came away impressed.
Guild Summit is way better than I thought it was.
I didn't realize it entered untapped.
Wait,
Okay.
you mean Plaza of Harmony?
Oh yeah, I keep on confusing.
No, it's fine.
Cards.
No, Plaza of Harmony enters untapped is Reflecting Pool for your gates. Gates 3 life. It's absurd. It's very good.
Yeah.
I think that Guild Summit that's the one that whenever you play gate you draw a card. When it enters the battlefield, if it's super late in the game, you just get to draw like 5 cards. It's not quite Sphinx Revelation because you don't draw or you don't gain life, but it's pretty close. You know, the way that it works with Growth Spiral, the way it works with Circuitous Root is disgusting, and I think it is the heart and soul of the deck, and the only reason why it really has seen any play. Gates of Blaze is obviously strong, helping you come back, but you need that engine.
Yeah, and turning your normally dead ramp cards into good draws in the late game is really important to increase consistency for ramp decks. That's why we see Valakut decks as some of the premier ramp decks, even in older formats, because Valakut naturally turns their lands late in the game into relevant cards. So
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many games I've lost to Valakut where they just assembled 7 mountains in a Valakut, and then every Explorer, every Rampant Growth,
every Tribe Elder, every Fetch Land,
everything that they draw after that, every card they draw is 3
Lightning Bolt Tribal.
Yeah. And then they just burn.
And then there we saw the cantrip on your gate was key. Gave you the 1x last draw you needed, hit the Gates of Blaze, and that turned the game around when you were facing down lethal damage. So really important there. We got to see a lot of what this deck does as well. A lot of the good disruptions from the sequencing there. Hero made a lot of tokens, applied a lot of pressure there in game 3, almost closed the game out, and was just one card short. Needed the 1 negate, or we found Thought Erasure, I guess, instead of negate. Which would have done it, and that's sort of the downside of having discard spells. But it's nice to have a good mix.
No, I agree.
So just came up a little bit short there, but a good showing from both decks. And I think Hero of Precinct 1 is a card that I overlooked. I wrote about it last week as specifically a card I overlooked, and I'm excited to see what people do with it as the format evolves.
I mean, it's so cool just how it can play either an aggressive role or a defensive role based on the matchup. It's like the perfect mid-range card. I like that it triggers off of non-creature multicolor cards too. Like when you cast a Mortify on an important permanent and you also generate a 1/1 out of it, like that's a pretty big swing in tempo as far as I'm concerned. And you're going to be hard pressed to find a card like Hero Precinct 1, where it's very good against the polar opposites of the format. Like something like Wild Growth Walker, it's really good against aggro. It kind of struggles against control because it's just a big doofus and the life gain doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Hero Precinct 1, it generates bodies that can protect your life total from attackers while also providing you with a lot of extra pressure against these control decks.
And as you said, triggering off of non-creatures allows you to generate this wide battlefield that they need a sweeper to answer without committing a lot of resources to it. So if you just play a Dovin and then play a Thought Erasure or a Discovery, suddenly you have 4 power on the battlefield. A single spot removal spell still leaves you with half of that. You're generating advantage from the Dovin ticking up or maybe making more tokens. And if they use one of their precious Kaya's Wraths or other sweepers to deal with it, you still have a stocked hand to redeploy and continue applying pressure. So really good there. And then obviously creating a lot of blockers against aggressive decks is great at buying you extra time and great with Basilica Bellhaunt as well in those matchups. So really important for mid-range decks to find those cards that pull double duty, and that's what Hero does, and it did really well for Wyatt last weekend.
All right, 2 questions, then we're going to take a short break.
Yeah, there's been a lot of focus on the RAM. How do you feel about maybe a Rhythm of the Wild Gatebreaker RAM build?
How many creatures are you putting in your gate
deck?
That
was from, this is from Luzy08.
Okay, I'll say this. Rhythm of Wild is borderline playable in general, right? In order to make this card good, and you can make this card very good, you need to fill your deck with like 32 other creatures. And if you do that, you have to sacrifice a lot in deck building because you're kind of bottlenecking yourself. And the Guildgate deck can't afford to play something like Rhythm of the Wild, even though it's pretty strong with something like Hydro Crassus. Giving it haste is a pretty big deal. Giving Gatebreaker Ram haste is a pretty big deal. However, you need to push your cards like Rhythm of the Wild to the max because by themselves they do nothing. And if you have to take a full turn off to play something like Rhythm, you need to make sure that on the next turn, your opponent is going to regret letting you untap with that enchantment. This is why I personally really like Rhythm of the Wild alongside Growth Chamber Guardian. And I haven't really been hugely impressed with Growth Chamber Guardian outside of being combined with Rhythm of the Wild, even though a lot of other people are still playing it. But, if you fill your deck with 32 other creatures, that's the Rhythm of the Wild deck I would play, not a deck like this.
There's plenty of big creatures you can pair with your Rhythm of the Wild and give haste and get in there. Galta is a really good one.
And it's also synergistic with the rest of your strategy.
Yes. Whereas Gatebreaker Ram requires you to put all these ETB tap lands in your deck, Rhythm of the Wild is a card that really wants you to curve out and be aggressive. Yep. You want to be playing Llanowar Elves into Rhythm on turn 2 and start slamming threats every turn and putting your opponent under a lot of pressure. The gates prevent you from doing that. They hamper your curve by a full turn, and Rhythm of the Wild takes a turn off to get into play. So now you need to make up 2 turns of tempo loss with giving your creatures haste, and that's just too much of a deficit to overcome.
Yeah.
And you need to put all these creatures in your deck, and creatures are a card type that wants to be played on curve. They suffer the most from having all these gates in your deck. So the cards just don't mesh very well on a strategic level, and there are plenty of other options that do mesh on a strategic level. If you just want to get that synergy of big creature, give it haste, get in for a big chunk of damage, you have plenty of options to do that with. You don't need to turn to Ram.
All right, one more.
One stood out to me. We actually tried to do this on Commander. STW wants to know: have you either of you experimented with Nikki of the Old Ways?
Well, this is real versus live, not Commander versus live.
Wow. Wow. Fighting words.
Turn 5 Zakama.
I can turn 5 Zakama.
I have not brewed at all with Nikia. I think a 5-mana creature that does not provide immediate value, and even if you untap with it, needs even more help to be good, as opposed to something like Lyra Dawnbringer that is just one consolidated package, is just not a card I'm interested in playing with in a standard environment. So I don't know, maybe if there's a specific shell that utilizes the extra mana with like Hydroid Crisis and other things, maybe it ends up being good, but the thing is, like, those cards that you would be using it with are good in other shells and don't need to rely on Nikia. So why are you adding that extra element and that extra moving part that can clog the gears?
Nikia is effectively a creature version of Wilderness Reclamation. It's just this card that if you untap with it, gives you an extraordinary amount of mana. The difference, Wilderness Reclamation lets you untap immediately. Nakia gives your opponent a window to kill it before you get any real value out of it.
And it's easier to interact with.
Yes. The reason why Wilderness Reclamation is, in my opinion, busted is because it's very hard to interact with in game one. Mortify being one of the major cards that can do it, counter spells, etc. But if all you need is a single piece of creature removal to interact with this thing, and it can be at sorcery speed on your own turn, it's not that impressive to me. And we've already seen Wilderness Reclamation decks kind of struggle with having too much mana sometimes, taking a little too long to get off the ground. And if you start playing Nakia the Old Ways and Zakama in your deck, you're going to have a lot of really clunky draws that opponents can just pick apart very easily. We saw in Game 2 of this previous match where I was able to stick a Wilderness Reclamation, but Ross just picked apart my previous interaction with a discard spell, and then he was able to negate my one payoff spell with a single negate on my Expansion Explosion. So it just becomes harder and harder the more hoops you make yourself jump through to make something good. Now, I'll say this. An effect that doubles all your mana is potent. It's very strong. And if you can figure out a way to utilize that extra mana without having a severe restriction on yourself like Nakia gives you, it's very good. We've seen Heartbeat of String combo decks in the past before be very good in Standard.
We're getting in the Wayback Machine now.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Heartbeat of Spring because Wilderness Reclamation starts to feel like that kind of effect.
Oh, yeah.
And Nakia also does the same thing. It doubles your mana, but you can only use it to play creature spells. So, obviously, it pairs well with things like Hydroid Crassus or Zakama, but there is a real cost in playing Nakia in your deck. Sometimes it does nothing, and sometimes your opponent kills it, and then the rest of your hand does nothing. And those two things alone are reason enough for me to not want to play the card.
Yeah, you have to weigh the upside of the card against the downside, not only in how easy it is to interact with, how easy it is to set up in a gameplay perspective, or from a gameplay perspective, and then how easy is it to set up from a deck building perspective. And Nakia, while it passes that first test, pretty easily fails the other two, and that's a problem. Whereas Reclamation is a lot easier on those other two requirements, with similar upside, even more upside because it works in multiples on the first.
All right. Well, I believe that was a pretty good discussion on the decks and everything. But we are going to take a short break here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our third and final match of the day here on Versus Live.